bisexual party going. Woo! Well, welcome back to Bisexual Killjoy, the place where we know bisexuality isn't a phase, it's a phenomenon. I'm Bailey, and this is...
Lynn!
In our last installment, we talked about...
sex, baby.
And in today's episode, Bisexuality is My Revolution, we'll be reflecting on the season and where we'd like to see the podcast go next. But before we do that, Lynn, what was your bisexual killjoy moment this week?
Well, my bisexual killjoy story, I don't know how much of a bisexual killjoy it is, but I think it was the moment when I realized that bisexuality and bisexual theory was compatible with my own revolutionary background. I'm from Latin America, and we have a history of tearing things apart and bringing it down. And I love that history of us. So when I started doing work around bisexuality and bisexual theory, I, in a way, thought that I was turning my back on all of my training, on all of my 4 or 5 years studying sociology. And it was actually really hard because, why am I studying this thing that doesn't have to do with my livelihood in a colony that's trying its best to survive? And all of my professors are doing such important work on violence and debt situations. Like, what about me? And as I was doing the reading and doing the work, I came across this text called Why Bisexuality is Queer. And towards the end of it, it talks about how bisexuality is inherently decolonial. And as I was discussing it with my mentor at the time, we had a moment where it's like, this is why I'm drawn to bisexuality. It's not because it's trivial. It's precisely because it's the exact opposite. It is a fundamental to our understanding of our everyday life. And I am talking about oppression in that I'm talking about oppression that affects everyone across the board. Yes, in my small little archipelago and in the global north and in the global south. And I think that what I realized is that bisexual theory is so compatible with everything that I was taught from this knowledge that comes from creating resistance and revolution, that's why I was inherently drawn to it. So having the conversation with my mentor when he was like, you're doing really great work at a time where it's important to do it, at a time where we're revolutionizing our thought around sexuality and gender and the patriarchy, that without it, it's not going to move forward. And you know what? Gosh darn. Yeah, like...
That's right. Yes, I am.
Yes, I am. I am a revolutionary, and it's good, and it feels amazing to know that I carry that in my blood, in my body, through my work, and out into the world.
I agree. I mean, I think you're a superstar in that particular way and in so many ways. I also just have like a bonus bisexual killjoy moment from this week because this is our last episode of the season. So we might as well double down and talk about how we're both bisexual killjoys.
Oh, yeah.
Yesterday, I was at a book club that was hosted by the bi+ women's group here in Boston. It was fabulous. I was so happy that they had me. And for those listening at home or on the bus or wherever you are, I live communally. I live in an intentional community with like 8 to 10 people, depending on the week. That's what my novel is all about. And people have no idea what to do with intentional living. They're like, is that are you guys like a commune? Are you communists? No. I know that some intentional communities are communists, but not ours. And what was so funny is being in this bisexual women's group talking about this book, someone brings up the fact that bisexuality and communal living have a lot in common because they're subversive.
Yeah.
When they shouldn't be considered subversive. People view communal living as a phase. You live with your friends as a phase, but eventually you and your one partner, preferably your hetero partner, will live alone together and raise your children. In this economy? Anyway, but it had me thinking, oh, why is it that all of these really beautiful forms of life and things that make life easier, more fluid, are viewed as phases? Why are they viewed as things that no one would choose to do unless they had to? And I was kind of blown away by this comparison and thought to myself, the fact that I live communally as a sexually fluid person in this fluid house dynamic that doesn't change a lot, but it does change sometimes, I was like, goddamn. I'm being a killjoy in a lot of different ways, huh?
Hell yeah. I love it.
So today, as we close the season, Lynn and I both wanted to take the time to not only talk about what's happened on the show, but also underline the fact that, as emphatically as possible, that bisexuality is revolutionary. And how do we know that, Lynn?
I personally know that bisexuality is revolutionary because of everything we've talked about this far. It makes us question the binaries we've been taught exist, both within ourselves and outside of us, and that now we know it's like, do they really? It inspires us to imagine a world that does not yet exist, but can be crafted with practices of radical responsibility. As a sociologist, my pursuit of bisexual theory is grounded in how deeply compatible it is with decolonial perspectives and knowledge that originates in the global south, in the places that we don't often hear about. And it's not just about identity, labels, sexuality, or sexual practices. It is about the experience of living in the margins and building a life that actively threatens the structures that oppress us. And, sometimes that's like bras and dresses and heels, because heels are intense. And other times it's constantly being called a killjoy. And just like you were saying, it's about creating spaces that you enjoy and that you prosper, and not attempting to assimilate just because that's quote unquote the right thing to do. And I think that's what I really love about your work and your novel. For those who want to know, Bailey's novel is A Lot of People Live in This House. You can find it on the Substack in the About section. And I think that what I love about it is that found community is revolutionary. Finding yourself and your people in a world that constantly wants you to be alone or with your one romantic partner is revolutionary. And I think that our journey to lay this kind of foundation with the large struggles bi+ people face out in the world has really revealed the importance of taking pride in our killjoyness. And what I wish for all of our listeners is for each and every one of you to have the same moment I did when I mentioned bisexuality in my classroom for like maybe the 30th time in one semester. And I felt everybody roll their eyes, and instead of feeling ashamed, I was like, yeah, you know what? I am a killjoy. I am a bisexual killjoy, ready to take your ass to school on why bisexuality is queer and how we're revolutionizing hetero and homosexual spaces. I feel powerful and excited and armed with all of the knowledge and tools needed to communicate.
And also, they wouldn't have to roll their eyes if they just listened the first time, right? And I was talking to someone about the podcast recently, and they wanted to know how we met and why we started the podcast. And I think for both of us, and correct me if I'm wrong at any point, but starting this podcast was so much more than trying to get our voices heard, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of work to make a podcast. It requires a lot of people. And both of us have so many things that we are doing at all times that to carve this protected time out, not just talk at each other on Zoom, but also to make the episode outlines and to do the research. And then our producer is doing the work of actually putting together this podcast so it doesn't sound like garbage. I work a full-time job, right? You were finishing your master's thesis up until very recently. Congratulations once again.
Thank you.
And soon you're going to be starting a freaking PhD program. It's not easy to do this, even when it's fun, everything's going well. But both of us have just seen the fierce inequity that bisexuals face from both sociological and health perspectives. We've talked to bisexuals. We've heard these stories again and again and again. Our community is sick and it's struggling. And only by bringing awareness to the issues and calling out inequity, that's the only way anything is going to change. So no shade to other creators who talk about bisexuality in media, and we will too, but bisexuality to us is so much more than visibility. There is a slowly growing pile of research on bisexuality, and someone needs to talk about it. And for the time being, that's us. And I hope that our team gets larger and that we have more speakers on the show to talk about the bi+ experience from so many different angles. But we had to start somewhere, and perfect cannot be the enemy of progress.
And I think that that's what's so powerful that got us here. And that's what's so powerful about our revolution, that perfect hasn't been the enemy of progress. We gave it a try. I remember feeling so cringe after listening to the first episode. And
what are you talking about? It was so good.
It was. But I have a terrifying fear of the camera and being recorded and being on the interwebs. This was terrifying to me. And I think that we've put ourselves out there precisely because there is something profound that motivates us in our communities. I have seen firsthand how powerful it is when fellow bi+ folks have more vocabulary to defend their identity with, to say this is who they are and feel solid. And I wanted more people to know. I wanted more people to have that very same feeling, not just those who are physically close to me or happen to go to the same university that I do. And that extends into our goals for how this whole first season has gone. We wanted to start this conversation about bisexuality, following the clues our elders left behind, answering the questions that maybe we didn't really know we had when we first came into our bisexuality, and be able to put words to the experience that was unsettling. Finding out that, hey, it's okay if you're bi, just don't fall in love with me, was a mind-blowing moment for me early on. Realizing that I didn't have to be a unicorn if I didn't want to was a mind-blowing moment for me. I know that episode was super filled with theory, but reading the epistemic contract of bisexual erasure blows my mind every time. My world makes sense. And I think that was key to this whole first season, and I'm so excited to see what comes up next.
Fully acknowledging the fact that over these last 8 episodes, we have dumped a ton of info on the listeners. I thought that we would do something a la The Simpsons clip show. But no clips, just us recapping. But for us to talk about the last 8 episodes and, I don't know, just see what comes of the conversation. I listened to the episode 8 Relationships and Intimacy episode we just did, and talking to you helps me understand myself in a better and deeper way. Talking to other bi people about their lived experiences outside of just their sexuality helps me affirm... I don't know. This is like a really personal topic because sex and intimacy, but talking to you about being bi and being poly made me think about my relationship dynamics. I'm like, yeah. I'm bi and I'm monogamous, and that doesn't change the fact that I'm bi. And us having that conversation really solidified it for me. I'm like, yes, I might be with a cisgender man and I might be a cisgender woman, but that doesn't make me any less queer on paper or in the world. I don't know. It was really nice. I got a little teary when I listened to it. I don't know how you felt after we recorded that, or was there anything that we missed that you want to talk about now?
I don't think I've listened to the Relationships and Intimacy episode just yet. I think that I was really excited to record it, and I felt really energized by the end of the recording. And I'm really passionate about relationships. It is something that lives deep in my soul. And I think that part of it is that I've made a really big effort throughout my life to become an expert communicator and to handle my relationships with grace, because there's nothing that fuels my anxiety more than feeling that people misunderstand me and that I didn't say things the way that I really wanted to say them. And it's okay if self-growth is motivated by your anxiety. You know, something's gotta be motivated by something. And what I love about talking about relationships and intimacy is that intimacy is about seeing into each other. It's about witnessing each other wholly, fully. And I think that I get really emotional talking about this because it's ethereal, it's spiritual to me. It's something that is so intangible, just like bisexuality is, because it is about getting to the core truth of something. What is a relationship if not just being close to someone, if not just feeling close to someone? And feeling close to someone is about seeing them fully, not trying to hide any of their parts and not trying to hide your parts.
The thing about being in love when you're also bi and self-aware is the fact that you automatically are even more sensitive to the world's perceptions of you. I don't know if you feel that way, but I do. And also, I get really aware of how other relationship dynamics play out. Like, I feel really bad for straight women who are in relationships with straight men.
Yes.
I feel really bad for them. And it's because I kind of equate straightness with a lack of self-awareness. And I know that'll get me in trouble, but particularly in men. When I meet a straight guy who is self-aware and is interested in the interior world of his partner, I'm automatically, doesn't matter their sexual orientation, like something about you is queer.
Yes.
Something about your whole situation here is queer. But this goes back to what we talked about, healthy relationships being queer. And my hot take on that.
Hell yeah. I don't know if this super got across in the episode, so I find it crucial to reiterate it here. The biggest reason why healthy relationships are queer is because what is queer about them is that you're not invested in maintaining the status quo. You're not invested in the social scripts. When your investment in your relationship is to your partners, and feeling close to them, and it is not to being the perfect wife, being the perfect husband. It is not about being the perfect caregiver. It is not about any of these scripts that we've been sold. That is subversive. That is queer. That is revolutionary. That is amazing, holy, and you should cherish it so much.
You should cherish it. And I wish... Oh no, I'm spiraling, Lynn. Now I'm thinking about how the only reason heteronormativity is a thing is because of the patriarchy, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, we've talked about this.
We have.
And how if you and your partner talk and cherish one another, it is inherently queer, and that shouldn't be considered a bad thing. Oh, hold on. I'm getting to like an epiphany here. It's only queer for as long as people actively choose to not engage in empathy and intimacy. And then it's status quo and it's no longer queer. There's something in there. I'm still like, I'm really wrestling with these whole concepts. I keep telling you, Lynn, like you're scrambling my eggs.
I try.
Can't. It's so much to unpack. And I go back to the suitcases and I'm looking at my suitcases full of all of my preconceived notions and ideas and thinking about queerness and about love and about intimacy and relationship dynamics and how my partner and I on paper don't have a traditional relationship because we don't subscribe to gender roles as often as our friends do who are in heterosexual relationships. And to me, I don't know, I had a moment where my head was in my hands. I'm like, what am I doing with my life?
I love hearing you talk about this wrestling because it reminds me of when I very early on was wrestling with everything. And truth be told, I had no idea how to cope. I was reading all of this literature. My eyes were being opened to what perverse things the patriarchy has made us believe, or what perverse things capitalism has made us believe, or Hallmark made us believe. No shade, I guess.
Shade.
I had a really tough time, like same as you. My head was being scrambled. I was like, what even is gender? What even is sexuality? What even is signaling? I had my hair purple, I think, at the time. And as I was started to grow it out because, I was scared of not being taken seriously, I was like, but if I have normal colored hair, how are people going to know? And
oh my God. I'm so sorry. This happened to me yesterday. I was at a party yesterday, and everyone at that party was queer, including myself and my partner, right? We were the only people in that room who didn't have colored hair or a wig on.
Really?
And everybody looked at us like we did not belong. And I was like, do I have to kiss everyone in this room to take me seriously? But no, there's like, oh, just look at so-and-so's straight corporate friends. And nothing about us is straight or I guess maybe me a little bit. But what I mean is I wasn't signaling my queerness in that room, and therefore no one wanted to talk to me.
What?
And you know what we did instead? We looked through a beautiful vintage book of the most beautiful erotic sketchings I've ever seen.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is the queerest thing that's happening in this room right now. It's just three of us looking at this book of erotic sketches from the 1850s.
I love that. I love that. I'm here for that story. Going back to what was I doing as I struggled, I needed people. I needed people to talk to. I studied a bisexual book club, and what we did was read bisexual theory. Less of a book club, more of a class, but, I was paying a lot of money to go to these classes that were essentially book clubs, and nobody wanted to talk about my topic.
Fuck.
Nobody wanted to help me out.
No.
And I was like, okay, I am done paying this much money for not feeling included. Mm-hmm. So I'll start my own. I'll start my own goddamn class. And I did. And that helped so much. Just talking with people and hashing it out and saying, I don't feel super attached to my gender. Do you feel super attached to your gender? And people were like, no, I really don't. Gender doesn't make any sense to me. And sharing that collective confusion, I think, together really made such a big difference. And in episode 7, we really did talk about gender detachment and how I didn't feel super attached to what it means to be a woman. And at the same time, it's like, but if I'm not the opposite, then what do? but do indeed.
Yeah, I feel like episode 7 was the episode we struggled with the most, even though you obviously have read a lot about it and have a really rich personal journey. But at the same time, gender is perhaps much harder to break down than sexuality. In a way, it depends on the person. But, what is gender? What are perceptions? Is my gender what I feel or what people perceive of me? Am I performing my gender? And it's just been, I'm still struggling with, I'm looking over our notes for this episode right now. I'm like, what are we even talking about?
And let me tell you that going to school to study gender does not make it any more clearer. It does not help at all, because it's like, if you follow this train of thought, then gender is what people perceive. And if you follow this other train of thought, then gender is what you feel. And if you are going out into the world, then gender is this other thing. And it's like, friend, you are not helping. This is not helpful. And my professors are like, well, we're not here to find answers. We're here to make more questions. And I'm like, that is unhelpful. That is unhelpful.
Part of me wonders if we should have switched these 2 episodes about signaling and gender, if that would have made it easier for me to understand. Because in episode 6, Does This Top Make Me Look Bi? We talked so much about what it means to look bisexual, what it means to perform our sexuality. You turned me on to heteronormative marking.
Yes.
And in a religious context, I was like, what the fuck? Oh my God, she's right. But I feel like this is perhaps the episode most of our listeners have resonated really well with, because at some point, every bi person has felt like, what do I have to do for people to not question if I belong here or not? What do I have to wear? How purple does my hair have to be? And we were talking about sexuality marking as straight and sexuality marking as queer. And it was just a frustrating episode that made me walk away thinking, I am just going to dress however I want to dress. And if you want to erase me, we're going to fight about it.
Yes.
Sure. Bailey, yes. Why not?
I'm doing this workout program. By the end of it, I'm supposed to know how to wield a sword. Come at me with your fight phobia. I'll slash it.
On the other side, though, because we want to make more space for bisexuality and to not be erased, it's like we have to be loud. And maybe every day I just need to wear a shirt that says, yes, I am bisexual, but I don't want to.
No. It's been years since I wore a graphic t-shirt. My entire closet is now just clothes that don't say anything on them. I think I have a single shirt that says Zen on it, because sometimes when you're having a bad day, you need a reminder that it's time to, breathe. And it's just so hard to get people to see you a specific way. And I think that doing the research for signaling, that was the very first episode that we really struggled a lot with like, what in the world do we even want to say? What in the world is the message we're trying to get across?
Well, that and the research isn't there, right?
True. For gender and signaling, it was this one author in the UK who had done some of the work, and it's hard to expect a single up-and-coming academic to have all of the answers for everything. So her work was really pivotal in the process of understanding signaling and gender itself for bisexual people.
Was that Standing Out, Fitting In?
No, that was Rosie Nelson's Making Space for Bi+ Identities. It was really great to read, and at the same time, I felt so frustrated because it's like, you're giving me the clues, and at this moment in time, I've just graduated my master's, I haven't started the PhD quite yet. I don't have the resources to do the research to answer the questions that she left. I can't follow the clues she left just yet, and it feels so frustrating to kind of go, okay, I need to know more. And where can I find this more?
Oh no, are we the more?
I think we are.
For the time being.
Yeah.
I know one of our listeners has done some research about bisexual dress throughout history. Right. And if you're listening to this, please email us. I would love to talk to you personally, maybe get you on the show to talk more about bisexual fashion throughout history, because they said I was right. I'm like, that's just what I want to hear today, is that I was right.
It's a great confidence booster, I will say. Reading everybody's comments is such a confidence booster.
Let's talk about passing privilege. That episode 5, I think, was was it one of our angriest?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think passing privilege was the one that we got really, really pissed off because of the story that I shared. I think it was...
Oh, yeah, about that lesbian activist who doesn't think bisexual women have ever done anything in their whole life and they need to sit the fuck down.
Oof.
I share that story at parties and other bi+ folks get pissed. especially bi+ elders that I've told that story to. They're like, I'm sorry, who was it? And I didn't have the name, but you can tell me offline. But there are several bi+ elders who'd like to have a word or two with that person.
I mean, yeah, it was an intense moment for me. And I think that's why the episode was very near and dear to my heart. And I think to both of us, because you were very outraged on my behalf, too. And I appreciate all of the bi+ people who were outraged. I think that episode in particular was a struggle of why is passing privilege a myth when we ourselves at some moment in time believe it? And at the same time, what happens when you can't or weren't able to be a bisexual killjoy? Are you failing? And I think it was really nice to come to a resolution of passing privilege is a myth because straight people don't think about their sexuality as much as we do. Okay? Straight people don't have to worry about all the things that we worry about all the time, every day. So that's that. And you don't feel the cause when you had a moment where you froze up, where you didn't know what to do, because you do what you can until you know better, and then you do better.
And it also isn't your fault that people make assumptions about you.
Truth.
Right? Me walking around holding hands with my husband shouldn't automatically make you assume that I'm straight or that he's straight.
Truth.
Sorry, the patriarchy fucked you up like that, but there are like other modes of living. I truly, honestly have started just assuming everyone's bisexual.
I mean, me too. I'm surprised every time someone tells me they're not bi. I'm like, what do you mean, though?
Really? Oh, that's so funny. You look bi.
I've never said that, but I'm here for it. I'll start saying that.
I'll have to say that to at least one person over the summer and report back on how it went. Like, Bailey got into 6 fights.
Because the whole passing privilege thing has to do with how people see you, that's why a lot of the conversations around bi+ness center visibility. Mm-hmm. And we did talk a lot about that in episode 4 of, yes, visibility and awareness, they're important, but how can we begin to center more than that? Something that's pivotal and crucial. How do we center recognition and action in the fight?
I think that you turned me on to this because I was talking about visibility and you were like, Bailey, it's 2024. I'm so tired of arguing about whether or not I exist. Bitch, I know I exist. And you didn't say it like that because you never talked to me that way. But
I would not.
But I would. And so I looked in the mirror. I'm like, she's right. It's 2024, bitch. It's beyond visibility. It's about recognition. It's about recognition in queer spaces specifically. I think that's what we talked about here.
Yeah.
And this episode is about getting resources in LGBTQ plus spaces. A goal of mine in Boston is to get a bi day going. We don't have that. We don't have a bisexual day in Boston, and we should.
We should.
Like, can you imagine the bridge with the bi flag colors on it just for one day? That'd be amazing.
I will cry. I will legit cry. Okay, we have 5 years during my PhD. It needs to happen.
Yeah, but that's more than visibility, I feel. Mm-hmm. That is recognition. That's recognition by a political figure and whatever thoughts one has about political figures or politics in general. But that would be a significant step towards, the bis have their own day. Maybe we should think more about them because a large portion of my constituency is bisexual and no one talks about that.
Yes, I agree. And I'm very passionate about recognition and action. I mention it in all of my talks. I say talks as if I get paid to do things. I pay people to let me talk.
Soon you'll start getting paid for your talks. We'll start getting paid for our talks.
Yes.
Because we're pulling each other up, Lynn.
Hell yeah. The bi cause is big enough for all of us. And we're a team here. It's something that I find extremely pivotal in our understanding of how LGBT activism works, where, yes, it's important for people to know that we exist and something more. I have made my peace with understanding that being a bi activist a lot of the times means being annoying to people, being annoying to those around me.
No, you're not annoying. It's not your problem if people find you annoying. You're just telling the truth.
That's true. That's tea. And a really big part of reconciling that has just been like, if you did more than just pay lip service to bi folks, then I wouldn't have to be on top of you saying stuff. That's all I'm going to say.
But In episode 3, we talk about why visibility has been such a long-standing issue and concern within the bi+ activist community, because we have been historically and systematically erased for so long, and it's kind of sort of getting better, but not really, because if you go into a space, right, into a queer space, you're a woman, automatically people think you're a lesbian. Or if you're a man, people automatically think you're gay, and there's no room for discussion about it. And when they find out, when you were discovered as the bisexual person who's just slipped in under the radar, then all of a sudden you're the problem.
Yeah. And in that episode about bi erasure, how this secret monosexual council, which may or may not exist, is there to try to erase bisexuality from our collective knowledge. When I think you said that as a joke, it sounds like people are plotting secretly in a room. And I'm like, you know what? Actually. Oh no, the conspiracy theories. It so often feels that way. Something out of a sci-fi movie where they're trying to just, the second that you think about bisexuality, just zap.
Now, wait a second. Are you working on a screenplay in your downtime? Because sci-fi would be a good place to explore bisexuality as a threat to monosexuality.
You know what? My sister is a filmmaker. I'll get her on that.
Get her on it.
And I think bi erasure was also a very impactful episode to talk about, because I know how much more sense my life made when I understood bi erasure itself as not just people assuming, but the fact that you can't even consider it as a possibility. That's why the conversation has turned so much to visibility. And it was really powerful, I think, to share all of these words and understanding of how they're going zap to our collective consciousness.
And the results of that zap, of that forgetfulness, whether it is a result of a monosexual council or not, has real world ramifications, as we talked a lot about in episode 2 about bisexual healthcare. And you know me, I'm obsessed with that topic, and I wish I didn't have to be. But bisexual erasure has real life health consequences. Bisexuals aren't considered in health surveys the way they need to be. Bisexual men and gay men are often still lumped into research groups, right? What is that even telling us? When people bring up their bisexuality, they're automatically labeled as sexual transmitter, as opposed to the many other things that bisexuals struggle with, namely mental health. If you go back and listen to that episode, we talk about the fact that bisexuals, what we see now is that we are at a heightened risk for bipolar disorder, or we're at a heightened risk for depression and anxiety. And it's not that bisexual people are sick, like we're not inherently sick. They're socioeconomic influences based on the way bisexuals are perceived and treated in the world. Bisexuals are more likely to live under the poverty line. They're more likely to have an abusive partner. They're more likely to we could talk about this and go on and on and on. Unfortunately, there isn't enough data to completely lift these current findings up and say, hey, look at us, government funding. Look at us. We're a really struggling community. But it's because we're erased.
Yeah.
It's because we're not considered. It's because we don't get grant money for research projects. It's because people don't care about bisexuals. We care about queer healthcare and we care about sexual healthcare, and that's about it. And I took out my stump box. It's our longest episode still, because I was just mad. Maybe that was the maddest I've been on an episode so far. But we also got a lot of people talking to us about health and how they struggle as bi folks with the very things we talked about in that episode, including chronic illness. And there's very little data about that corroborating that data point, but I believe it based on all of the bi people I know who have a chronic illness.
Yes.
So if you were going to listen to any episode, Bailey's recommendation is the bi+ health episode. They're all good, but I'm particularly proud of that one. Was there any takeaway you took away from that episode, or like something that surprised you?
I think my biggest takeaway was the importance of coming out to your doctor and positioning yourself as a bisexual expert with your doctor. I think that I had never thought about it that way, partially because I avoid the doctor like the plague, even if they're supposed to cure their plague, but that's not the point. And I think that it shaped my perspective on what a bisexual killjoy is meant to be and do, and how we're supposed to approach things where, being a bisexual killjoy is 100% about slashing the biphobia. And at the same time, it's about being an advocate for yourself. It's about standing up for you and knowing that your bisexuality is important. And we spoke about that in episode 1 of, what is a bisexual killjoy? What are we meant to do? Is it a misnomer, and in a way it is, where we're not slashing our own joy, but for those who do take joy and pleasure in claiming that bisexuals have no right to be in the activist fight because we quote unquote pass, then it is about slashing that joy. How dare you take pleasure in that? And it is about slashing these preconceived notions of how bisexuality just doesn't belong. And I think that throughout all of these episode recaps that we've been talking about, it embodies that, yeah, being a bisexual killjoy is being armed with all of these arguments to say, friend, no.
In looking over our notes from that first episode, I see that you wrote the podcast is both a project and journey in defining and exemplifying what it means to be a bisexual killjoy, which we've done, what makes a bisexual killjoy, which we've done, and what gains we can achieve by centering bisexuality in our lived experiences, which I think we've accomplished in this first season. Those were our goals, and I'm going to give 3 checks across the board for it. But the work is not done. Just because this first season of now 9 episodes is complete, we are still giving you homework for the summer until we come back. And for our allies who are listening to this, and I'm sorry if you're straight and I was a little rough with everybody earlier, but again, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm probably not talking about you, and you might be a little queer, and that's good. I think that's a good thing. But what you're going to do this summer is you're going to pick a book from the reading list below or in the show notes to study the summer, right? We both put down some of the most basic suggestions that are also decent reads. Personally, I don't care for Jen Winston's Greedy, but some folks feel really seen by it, helps them understand the bi experience, and that's what matters. My opinion doesn't. Please read it, give it a shot, or pick something else.
For our fellow bisexual killjoys, thank you so much for staying with us throughout this whole season. It has been a wild ride. Your homework: keep calling out biphobia and bi injustice. We are in your corner. You have an emotional support Lynn and an emotional support Bailey supporting you all through this process. Come find us at bi+ events. Both of us are going to be in Boston starting this summer. I'm moving. It is all very exciting. And we're looking forward to becoming a bisexual menace together. We're here for it.
I'm going to add also that you should do some reading. If you haven't read, there's a collection called By Any Other Name. It's from 91. It's often considered the Bi Bible. It's a compilation, an anthology, if you will, by Lorraine Hutchins and Lani. And bisexuality has obviously evolved over the decades, the literal 3 decades since that book was published. But it's still a good place to start. And it could help you start writing your own bisexual killjoy story.
And should you want more information on what it means to be a killjoy overall, I highly recommend the Feminist Killjoy Handbook by Sarah Ahmed. Thank you so much to all of my professors who told me to read it and inspire this whole spin on what it means to be a killjoy.
And for our LGBT plus groups, if there are any of you listening, people who are on boards, we haven't heard from you, so maybe you haven't found us yet. In any case, thank you for sticking with us through the season. I would love it if you shared our podcast with other organizations, shared it with people within your organizations. Take some time to reflect and audit what you're doing. Bisexual, not just Visibility Week, baby, the whole month is coming up in September, and it would be a great time for you to take the knowledge that you've gained from this podcast and apply it to helping this very large population, even if you don't see it. Ask yourself, how is your group supporting bisexual killjoys?
Next up, we have season 2, and we're so excited. We have so many plans. We're going to be talking about bisexuality and labor coalitions, love, oppression, mental health and neurodivergence, bisexual invisibility for men, and so much more. If you have any thoughts, any comments, any suggestions for guests or speakers that you would like to hear from, please send us an email at bisexualkilljoy@gmail.com or check out our link tree in the link in bio on our Instagram. There's a form there that might be easier for you.
Thank you so much for tuning into Bisexual Killjoy, where we know that bisexuality isn't a phase, it is a phenomenon. This has been an incredible first season. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you, Lynn, for teaching me, for talking to me, for talking me down. Thank you so much to our producer, Richie Smith. And Pride may be over, but bisexual killjoyness is not. And like Lynn said, we are diligently preparing for season 2. We have a list of speakers we want to reach out to. That list can get bigger. This project can go on for as long as it needs to go on. Send us their name. If you like the work a group is doing, tell us about it. Until next season, follow us on social media, subscribe to our Substack. Just because we're not talking to you doesn't mean that we're not talking to each other and writing. Share us with your friends. Rate our podcast, preferably 5 stars. Help spread the phenomenon. And until we meet again, keep being a bisexual killjoy.
Stay bisexual and stay strong.